On this week's episode of What's Up Weekly, IU celebrates homecoming weekend.
And we speak to IU Student Government President Ky Freeman about LGBTQ History Month. What's Up Weekly starts now.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of What's Up Weekly. I'm Anna Black.
And I'm Cali Lichter.
This past weekend, IU's homecoming festivities kicked off on Friday with the annual Homecoming Parade. Various student organizations and local businesses participated in the event. The parade covered a lot of Bloomington ground, starting at the intersection of 17th Street and Woodlawn Avenue, then turning east onto 13th Street. The route continued turning north on Fee Lane, then headed west to return to Memorial Stadium. After not having homecoming festivities for a year, it's clear that the Hoosier spirit is alive and well.
Continuing with homecoming celebrations, we asked those returning to campus about their favorite memories during their time at IU. What's Up Weekly reporter Austin Rubin spoke with some alumni on campus. Check it out.
Well, it's homecoming week here in Bloomington, and right now I'm outside the sample gates here on IU's campus to ask alum what are some of their favorite IU memories. Let's take a look.
My favorite IU memory, I would have to say it's just like being on the campus and all the outdoor activities that we have here, because campus is just so gorgeous and it's just so fun to be like both in a city but also just feel like you're in all of this nature. So I would say that's my favorite.
So I was in the Marching 100 when I was at IU, and my favorite memory is traveling with the team and the band to San Francisco for the Foster Farms Bowl.
I would have to say beating Penn State last year, and just the celebration that occurred after that. It was an unforgettable memory that I will probably never forget.
I lived in Collins, and we were all in the basement watching the one TV that we had, because that's how it was back then. And we went on a last-second shot. Keith Smart drained a floater. And it was a walk-off win. He went running up down the court like a crazy person, and then we all ran as fast as we could from the basement of Collins to Showalter Fountain.
My favorite IU memory was probably living on 3rd Street in the Tridal House and walking through campus and just enjoying everything that IU has to offer. I got my education degree here and love that as well.
It's really a collection of all the friends that I made, probably. In my fraternity, and we still hang out to this day. I met some up here this weekend.
Well, Ernie here says his favorite IU memory was riding for the IDS. So many IU alums had fantastic memories to share. For IUS TV News, I'm Austin Rubin.
It's great to hear that so many alumni came back this weekend to celebrate.
Starting this month, trees around Bloomington are wrapped in artistic sweaters to raise awareness for domestic violence. Middle Way House, which provides support for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, wraps the trees every year. A person or group sponsors each sweater, working toward providing resources for people living with violence. The patches on the trees say the name of the sponsor and a 24/7 crisis helpline phone number. This year, Middle Way House is celebrating 50 years in the community and said they thank all of the volunteers and artists. October is LGBTQ History Month. Joining us in the studio is IUSG's President Ky Freeman, the first openly gay man to be elected in this position. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. I'm excited to be here, I assure you. I'm excited.
So how does it feel to represent the LGBTQ community as IUSG's president now?
I think for us, what it is doing, is allowing students to know that they have the capacity for this type of leadership, because I think within this conversation for LGBTQ people, especially looking at the intersection of race that comes in, is that more often than not, you're felt as if you're not empowered to go after these types of leadership for positions, because you're going to have to conform to fit these different standards of what professionalism is, and that's not including your exuberant style or your deviation from gender norms that we've been internalized for so long. So I am beyond thrilled and excited to consistently just be myself in this space and do things my way more than anything.
Yeah. What was your reaction when you got the news that you would be the next person to lead IU student body?
Whew, that was a very interesting day, I'll tell you that. So Madeline Dietrich's the student body vice president, she called me and I was like, first of all, I was half asleep. Let's throw that out there. And then she's like, you're going to be the student body president. I said, wait, girl, what? Huh? What? She says, you're going to be the student body president. I said, no way. No way. And then all of the news had broke out and I had saw it and to me, it was like, it was a crazy election that we went through. And, the whole commitment that we had with the Elevate administration is just like committing to engaging with the students, energizing and empowering them to see that now we get to do this for the entire campus of now 45,000 plus students was just like crazy. So it's like, now I get to share my ideas of radical love and reevaluate this idea of what a strong leader looks like. Because a lot of times we put a lot of our strength in being triumphant or relentlessly triumphant, as opposed to looking at it through your strength, or the truest form of strength really comes from vulnerability, comes from love, and it comes from forgiveness. So how do we put that in place or put that in picture, especially when you're talking about governance and looking at, what's going on in our, community climate, our national climate, and figuring out a way to do that for students.
And did you have any fears or concerns while running?
I think I did. To be completely honest, in looking at this type of position or this type of space, I am the 5th Black student to do this in this 70+ year history. So there's not a lot of people I can go back to say, hey, how did you go about this? How did you navigate this? How did you do that? And, being, the first openly gay Black man to be in this position is interesting too, because consistently, I think in a lot of spaces, you have to choose which identity that you're going to bring to the conversation. And in my case, it wasn't like either of the identities that I brought was the most favorable. So it's like, how do you find a way to stay true to you in, these conversations? And really understanding though too, is that your skill set and your competence and your experience that you've had makes you worthy of these types of things here. Is that you don't have to be well versed in politics to understand how to advocate for a student, or you don't have to understand legalese and all of that language. Just have the drive, the passion, and the initiative. And I think that's really what it was. And that's what I was the most terrified. There was no one there or that many examples I had to go off of. So really, it's almost like you're paving your way through this. And that was, I think, the scariest part. It's like, breaking a barrier is like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. You broke a barrier. But the thing about it on the flip side is that, when you break a barrier, you have to tend to those scars and those wounds by yourself. So it's like figuring out how to build that team, how to build that community. And I'm just so grateful that I had, Madeline to be there with me every step of the way, because we consistently empowered one another. So we're doing what we want to do to the student body, to each other, really focusing on that like relationship building.
Yeah.
So you were previously president of the Black Student Union. So how is being president of IUSG different from being the president of the BSU? That
is a great question. So, being the president of the Black Student Union, I focus on that my sector. That was my area that I was supposed to be the chief advocate for there. And I think now, being the president of the student body, is that I'm seeing a larger picture of things that are all happening here. And that is bringing into question, I think, more than anything, this conversation of equity. And how do we fairly represent our students? How do we make sure that the processes and the policies that we're doing, even as a student government, is encompassing all of these things? Now, mind you, we're navigating competing interests all at the same times on how to go about doing things. But the biggest thing is that I'm finding in this position, more than anything with those, and not to say that in the Black Student Union it was a monolith and the perspectives that were there, but that silver lining, like going below that line and finding what's the common interest here, is that we're all mad about public safety. So we want to see something done about that. So let's collectively rally on that point, as opposed to how do we go about getting there. But really, I think than anything, it prioritizes the need more than anything to build coalitions, because it's not just one student that I'm advocating for. I say there is a death of the individual and an adoption of the collective, because I am the vessel of the student voice. And I want to make sure that I'm doing that as best as I possibly can. So you have to listen. You have to be open to all of these different ideas and not even centering yourself in listening to these things, because the goal is to make sure that all students at this university feel first safe, and then secondly, they feel like they belong.
So what are what's your main goal during your time as president that you want to accomplish?
Okay, great question, great question. So the biggest thing that we're really focusing on is looking at public safety as it applies, as we've saw from a lot of things of that conversation with the uptick in drug and alcohol abuse on campus, with the uptick in sexual assault cases that are happening here. The necessity for public safety, I think even following 2020, is one that I'm really passionate about, because I spend a lot of time working with, the IUPD Advisory Board or the IUPD University-wide Commission for Hiring, Training, and Policy, and looking into ways that we can, really improve the experiences that students are having here, because their sense of safety is something as well that has to be regarded. And then the second thing that we're really looking at is like student temporary wages on campus. Is that we've talked a lot about how do we get to this 15? We're looking at, okay, what's the data saying? What are we looking like here in this department? What is this department doing? And really trying to really fight for an incremental increase of $15 over the course of time. Because students very much so, given the pandemic that we're still within, I don't want to say that we've done or we got past it, but we're still within it, that there is a necessity for these types of things, or more compensation for the community that we all live in. Because Bloomington's a little expensive, I'm not gonna lie to you. So making sure that students can come here and feel as if, their financial wellness is connected to their sense of belonging. Everything goes back to the sense of belonging. So sense of safety, sense of belonging, it's everything that goes back to how do we make sure that students feel like they belong on this campus.
Yeah.
And you being elected president was such a huge step for LGBTQ plus representation, but I understand that we have so much more to go and so far to be done. So what else needs to be done to further this representation and inclusion?
I think really it comes down to approaching these conversations and looking at equity. And a lot of times I think that the fundamental misconception when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion work, people get the diversity part, but not the equity and inclusion. So that is figuring out a way to make sure that when you're evaluating the spaces that you're in, what's the accessibility that's here? Is this language gender inclusive? Is this language a way that students from, international students or students who are not English as their first language can understand what's going on in these processes? Really evaluating how those types of things work. And I say the biggest thing for me, and especially for the student government that I say, is like every organization, do an audit, a diversity, equity, and inclusion audit, and figure out the ways that you can improve. Because the way to do that is to understand that in this work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, you are an active learner. So things are ever changing, always ever changing, and acknowledging that. And that there might be times where you might hold a bias, and that's bias isn't inherently bad, because sometimes you don't even know you have them. But finding ways to counteract those and work with these various communities and get them in the space, and not just having them in the space to have them there to say, hey, you checked the box, you got them, but giving them the same access to power and authority, because what you'll see is they'll come up with creative ways of looking at solutions or looking at problems to come up with comprehensive solutions. So it's really about not so much of expecting these students to come to us as opposed to going to them. And that's how you get more students that look like me in these spaces to come and really feel as if they have a place in leadership in these types of conversations.
Ky, thank you so much for coming in and chatting with us.
No problem.
Yes, thank you. After the break, we'll share with you this week's trending topics. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Rumor has it that Adele is back and better than ever.
The award-winning British singer just broke news that she is dropping a new album next month. She went on social media to tell fans her new track called 30 will hit music platforms November 19th. To say this has been a long time coming would be an understatement. She hasn't released an album in 7 years, but since her last release in 2015, she says she has, quote, found my feeling again. And I know that it'll also have everyone else feeling again. Last Friday, she came out with a single from her upcoming album called Easy on Me.
I've already had this song on repeat. If the rest of the album is anything like this, I think this could be her best album yet.
On October 13th, actor William Shatner became the oldest person to fly to space at 90 years old. Who better to break a space record than Captain Kirk himself?
Shatner, who's famous for portraying the famous captain of the Starship Enterprise in Star Trek, went up to space on the second Blue Origin spaceflight. Shatner said that even though everybody assigns him the knowledge of space because of his role in the show, he's always been consumed by curiosity and adventure, and it's what drives him to do what he does. These flights are designed to take passengers up to the official boundary of space, which is 100 kilometers. A teary-eyed Shatner said upon descent that this was one of the most profound experiences he's ever imagined, and that the whole event was extraordinary.
The title of oldest person in space was previously held by 82-year-old veteran aviator Wally Funk, who traveled to space with Blue Origin on July 20th.
William Shatner is not the only one generating buzz around this billionaire space race. The royal couple's criticism of this race has led to a new multi-million-dollar initiative.
This past Sunday, Prince William and Kate announced the first ever winners of the Earthshot Prize. This new award program was created by Prince William and acclaimed British naturalist David Attenborough to help combat climate crisis and help the environment. So for the next 10 years, five winners will be selected annually. Winners are those invested in helping the planet by providing different cutting-edge technology and solutions. And the prize is quite a chunk of change. Each winner receives a little under $1.5 million. Prince William criticized recent space travel endeavors and says that all efforts right now should be focused right here on Earth. In a video, he, quote, "Today, the warning sounds around the world are clear. We don't need a moonshot, we need Earth shots."
The prize will be offered to the U.S. next year. Nominations for 2022's finalists will open January.
Some people like reading their horoscope every morning, others like turning to Noodles the pug. Jonathan Gratz has become a viral TikTok sensation, using his dog Noodles to predict if it's a good day or a day to take things carefully.
And what has entered the TikTok lexicon as a bones day or a no bones day? Noodles the pug is now the internet's newest horoscope, and it's simple. If the pug falls back down on his bed, it's a no bones day. This isn't a bad thing, it just means that Noodles wants you to take caution throughout the day. If the pug stands, it's a bones day. This is a day for relaxation and good vibes and is a very rare occurrence. Besides the fun nature of it all, Gratz uses his platform to promote Adopt Don't Shop since he adopted Noodles 6 years ago. He also says that it's just something fun he does with Noodles and that lifting Noodles up in the morning is something that they've done forever.
Tuesday was a no-bones day, so I took Noodles' advice and stayed in bed until this taping. And that's what's up this week. Tune in next week for more local and entertainment news.
Be sure to follow us on social media. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at IUSTV News.
For What's Up Weekly, I'm Anna Black.
And I'm Callie Lichter. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.